All right. And Taffy's reaching out to me there for a second on Slack. So anyway, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Meredith. I was your instructor yesterday when we talked about fundamentals. And this is the day 2 of a 3-part series. So our plan here today is to talk about observability fundamentals. And then tomorrow we'll talk about our Cloud SIEM security product. And so about a year ago, we went through a little metamorphosis within the company and said, our focus used to be on logs and metrics. And that's all fine, well, and good. But in reality, let's turn it into something really actionable. And so we decided to change the focus and talk about observability throughout your organization as far as your data and your metrics and things like that, as well as observability into your applications and that sort of thing. And then our other focus was going to be security. And so today will be about the observability component, and tomorrow will be about the security component. Again, I remind you that we typically do these virtual Cert jams for the European area about once a quarter. And so if there's specific topics, specific classes, specific interests that you all have, please feel free to reach out to Steve and your team out there in Europe and let us know what you are interested in, and we will gladly conduct those sessions and do the things that we need to do. My only ask of you is, if you have any questions as we're going through the material, please feel free to ask. Okay, that's all I ask. So help us help you. That's basically the way it's going to work. I am going to stop my video camera here for a second just to save a little bandwidth.
Can we get the details of Steve? Because I'm based on an American company, so I have hardly any contacts in Europe, and I really would like to have some Logic contacts in Europe.
Certainly, Steve, can you put your e-contact information again in the chat box, please? So, yeah, and for those of you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
That's all right. So it's not Steve, John. It's Taffy.
Oh, okay, I got you. Now I understand.
Yeah. But that's not a problem, Rob. Definitely. So, Rob, my name is Taffy. I'm one of the sales engineers out here in EMEA. Would absolutely love to connect with you. I'm putting my contact details within the chat, and feel free to reach out to me and to connect via LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And the slides that we had from yesterday, okay, just to help you out, here is Steve's email address here as well. So let me just go ahead. Oops, let's see if I can't copy that. And I will put that information in here as well. And Taffy, if he put information in there as well, that'd be great. For those of you who are working for a US-based company, obviously establishing local contacts in your European area, I'm sure is very valuable. I know just having people around and that sort of thing is just very, very handy. So just bear with me a second while I get this information in there. There we go. There's Steve's. Oops, hold on. So I just sent that to the panelist, which isn't going to do us a lot of good. Let's try to send it to everyone there. Okay, there we go. There's that. Okay, looks like so hopefully you've got that contact information there. Okay. All right, and Taffy, appreciate you coming back. And yeah, if anybody, okay, good. So yeah, if anybody wants to reach out, anything we can do to help you, we certainly want to do that. One of the things, and some of you mentioned that you're based in the US, if I go out here to our customer-facing site, sumologic.com, and over here, if I go into resources And under resources, there's a section here for learn. And I'll give you this link if you want it. But you'll see that besides doing the European session that ends tomorrow, next week we'll be doing some US classes. So these are US classes that we're going to do, and we typically run them twice a day for the US. So we run them at 7 a.m. PST, which is 10 a.m. my time, East Coast time, and it's probably late afternoon or early afternoon in Europe time zone. But you can see the next week that we'll be doing these classes. And again, we do them twice a day across the US for the two different time zones in the US, East Coast and West Coast. But that's some of the stuff that's on our schedule. And then, of course, you can also see what the other classes are. And if you want to, you can see, when they're being offered and sign up for them. We also have self-paced training that you can use as well. So just wanted to make that available to you. But anything we can do to help you, please let us know. Additionally, if your company has about 10 folks that need to be trained, 10 or more, again, talk to Steve, talk to Taffy, and we can gladly schedule something and do some training to help you out. So that's that for the commercial. I'll leave that alone, and let's go ahead and get ourselves started. Let me make sure everybody's mics are enabled. So a bunch of folks just joined us. And make sure everybody's mics are enabled. And here we go. So our focus here is observability fundamentals. And we're going to talk about the various components of our observability solution. So we're going to talk about observability in a lot of different senses. We're going to talk about AWS observability. We're going to talk about tracing, open telemetry. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. And you'll find that for us, the three pillars of observability solution are metrics, tracing, and logs. Those are the three things. And we'll see when you want to use metrics versus tracing versus logs and that sort of thing. We'll also talk about tools like the root cause explorer, the service map, tracing, all kinds of various things. So this class, as I mentioned yesterday, is really about, if you'll bear with me a second, in the Sumo Logic environment, I'll have you log in just a little bit. It's about, under this new menu, we're going to talk about traces. We're going to talk about spans. We're going to talk about service maps. We're going to talk about this explorer. We're going to talk about root cause. So all the things we typically don't talk about in the other classes is here. And these are things that we've developed over the last year that you can basically use and see and that sort of thing. So that is going to be our focus for today's session. And as I mentioned, tomorrow's session is going to be all about the security, this Cloud SIEM Enterprise, and SIEM standing for Security Information and Event Management. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. That's on tomorrow's agenda. All right. So back to my slides for a second here, and I promise I won't try to inundate you all with death by PowerPoint. Game plan, as you can see, we've got a fairly full agenda here, right? We're going to talk about what is observability, what is observability to us, actually. We'll talk about using metrics with Root Cause Explorer, and we'll talk about that. Do a hands-on lab where we find an issue that we can identify using Root Cause Explorer. Then we'll talk about tracing, and then we'll do a hands-on lab for tracing. Then we'll talk about when logs are our best bet with observability and working with those logs. Finally, we'll do a summary and next step, and that'll take care of the first 2 hours of this. Then we will take an exam. And just like yesterday, the exam is open book, open notes, open slide. I will tell you that most of the content out of this is either in the slides or it's really in our documentation. So there's going to be a couple of pages I'm going to point out to you to help you prepare for the exam. Now, as with yesterday, if you take the exam and you pass it, you can send us an email, send it to training-promotions@sumologic.com. Send us a copy of your certificate with an email address, and we will send you back a $15 Uber Eats voucher. It is just our way of saying thank you for taking the certification and joining the certified. So again, if you take the exam right after the class, pass, we will gladly provide you something to eat lunch with. So pure and simple. I don't know that $15 covers a dinner, but usually it covers a lunch. So anyway, As we have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I am going to press on. So feel free to interrupt us at any time. Again, Taffy is here. So in case you get stuck, in case you get a question, you are welcome to reach out and ask us. You can either ask us in the chat box, or you can unmute your mic and you can ask us directly. So just trying to make sure everybody has the ability here to talk. Tom, for some reason, I'm having a hard time giving you the ability to talk. I'm not sure why. There we go. There we go. We got it all. All right. So observability. What is observability, right? We want to be able to see across your products. We want to be able to see across your environment. If you're running AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, whatever, we want to be able to see all the relationships between the microservices. We want, even though they may be on dissimilar platforms, whatever, we want to be able to see across the environment. We want to see across your applications. We want to see your entire infrastructure so we can see how things are tied together. All right, pure and simple. And for those of you remember yesterday I talked about how we could look at operational intelligence or security intelligence or business intelligence across, again, whether you're on on-prem using your own servers or you're running microservices, doesn't make any difference to us. We at Sumo happen to be running on AWS, so we support multi-tenancy, we're scalable, we're elastic. We've got a bunch of APIs that you can use to do things programmatically if you want to, and we keep expanding those APIs out. And then, of course, the big thing that I pointed out yesterday is our security certifications. So we work with great rigor with outside agencies to get ourselves certified in various aspects of security. So what is observability to us, right? Some people think, okay, if there's a problem, alert me. That's observability. That is not our definition of observability. That's just the tip of the iceberg. What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to understand what happened by monitoring, by logging, by metrics, by notifications, by, our observability tools here. And we want to be able to determine root cause analysis so that we can figure out what went wrong, take the appropriate action, get ourselves back online, and then on to the next issue if we need to. So we want to understand really what happened here, okay? Alerting, notifications, that's nice, but that's just telling us we got a problem. We want to know what the problem was, why the problem existed, and hopefully try to prevent it in the future. So that's observability for us. You will find, and for test purposes, this is a fair question, the 3 pillars of observability for us are tracing, metrics, and logs. Yesterday, you saw how we can go into the logs and we can see various entries from various logs, which typically tell us, why things happened. And we talked yesterday about metrics typically tell us what happened. Metrics provide us key performance indicators on, CPU utilization, disk drive, whatever, some sort of outage, and typically tells us what is happening. You'll find that we've added another pillar here, tracing. And tracing, when you're doing transactional processing, lets us see the steps that have happened and where it has broken down in this process. So these 3 things, tracing, logs, and metrics, are the pillars of our observability solution. And you'll see that we'll play with this today. I mean, we'll dig into this today. So come fairly familiar. Now, the holy grail for us, you and I, our companies respectively, is the customer experience. We want our customers, when they go out and they buy things from us, or when they buy things from you, we want them to have a wonderful customer experience. So whether they go to your website, whether they're interacting with your customer support teams, whatever, you want to have a great customer experience. Now, that customer experience really depends on 4 things. It depends on the overall reliability of your environment, right? If your phone systems aren't working, not very reliable, not a good customer experience, right? If you've got a website, and again, it's not reliable, we're going to have problems. Now, on top of that reliability, we got 3 pillars here. Availability, right? Is the system up 24/7 when the customers need it? Performance, as I need to scale my performance up, does it scale up? If I don't need that performance anymore, can I scale it back down? That sort of thing. And then, of course, the third part of this is security. Is it secure? If I'm doing credit card transactions, am I using public key infrastructure and PCI compliance, to ensure that the data is secure and everything's happy. And again, in Europe, of course, you have special rules and regulations with regards to security of information and things like that, that also, you've got to be cognizant of. So now, what we found out is by doing a little research here that as far as availability is concerned, 100 milliseconds of downtime reduces e-commerce sales by 1%. That's 100 milliseconds. That's a tenth of a second. Just a tenth of a second reduces your e-commerce sales by 1%. It's not good. Also, with regards to performance, a half-second latency drops traffic by 20%. And so again, we're missing out. We're losing opportunity, we're losing money, we're losing revenue. And under the security side, the denial of service attacks are anticipated to double here by the end of 2022 to 14.5 million. So we live in a very interesting world, and therefore we need this observability. We need to see what's going on. We need to have this transparency in here. Now, again, just to kind of reiterate something we talked about before, some people think observability is monitoring, right? And monitoring is, like I said, that alert or something tells us we've got a problem. But monitoring is just one component of the overall observability solution for us at Sumo Logic. So observability is not only just monitoring, but we want to understand why things went wrong. We want to be able to do root cause analysis. And that's our goal. So earlier I made the comment that monitoring was just the tip of the iceberg. So let's give you a picture of an iceberg, right? So here, when we talk about monitoring, we're looking at what's gone wrong, notify us, alerts, things like that. Generally takes about 20% of your data. But the part that you can see under the waterline is we want to be able to diagnose this. We want to be able to understand what's going on. We want to be able to provide contextual information here. That's going to require about 30% more of our data. And then ultimately what we want to do is troubleshoot this. And we're going to talk about some of the tools that we're going to use to troubleshoot this, one of which is the root cause explorer. And this is going to take about 50% more of our data. But we want to be able to see, for us, our observability solution is all of this, not just alerting, not just diagnosing, but being able to troubleshoot and get in here and understand exactly what the heck happened. So, as far as our capabilities of our observability solution, of course, we can monitor. I mentioned that briefly yesterday. That's fine, but we can also diagnose. And when we diagnose, we're looking at things like our metric explorer. So we create metric queries to see what's going on. We also have trace analytics using the service map and tracing, where we can see transactional issues, as well as an entity explorer. So we can see the various entities and the relationship of the activities that happen. And then as far as troubleshooting goes, we're going to use something called the root cause explorer. And as we alluded to yesterday, ultimately all of the troubleshooting is going to push us back into the logs where we can see why things broke down. So ultimately, when we're troubleshooting in a troubleshooting phase, we're going to see that we're going to use the log search quite a bit. I see I've got something in the chat box. Okay. Yep. So somebody asked a question, Rushan. I appreciate the question. Where can we download the slides that are being presented? Absolutely, because you're going to want those slides. Okay. So let me stop my slides here for just a second. And let me show you. Okay. If you were to go out to our support site, so that's support.sumologic.com. There's our support site. I'm going to give you this URL too, by the way. And then if you click on community to take you to the community site, and then if you search for slides, okay, a little convoluted, sorry. Out here, when you search for slides, here is the link for all of our classes. So here is the fundamentals class that you had yesterday. Here's the Cloud SIM class that we're going to have tomorrow. Here is the observability fundamentals class. And here is the slides. And then you can click on that slide and you can download these slides through your LinkedIn account. By the way, if this little banner pops up here, this is on SlideShare, something we don't control. It annoys me. You can put your cursor anywhere outside of that little banner, click, and it will hide that banner. Now, what I want to do is I want to take this URL and I want to copy it and paste it into the chat box. So Rashan, thank you very much for asking. And here is where you can find that information. Okay. And as I mentioned, a lot of the test questions are based on the slides. They're also based on the documentation, which I'll get into in just a little bit. So you're very welcome. Okay. So again, in your environments, and again, maybe, you've got a simple environment, maybe you've got a very complicated environment, you've got your various layers, right? You've got your client layer, your presentation layer, your application layer, and your data layer, right? So your data stores may be relational, they may be non-relational. We got multiple data sources that you might have. In your application layer, you've got a bunch of microservices. Those microservices can be running Java, can be running Python, can be running all kinds of different things. And so we want to be able to see across those various microservices, and we want to see how they're related together. As well as then this funnels up to the API gateway or your presentation layer, which is then going to talk to your clients, whether your clients are on a computer or they're on a mobile device, doesn't make much of a difference. So we want to see across this environment to see exactly what is happening. And so we're going to talk about some of that fun stuff here, okay? Minik asked a question, are we going to discuss anything on SOAR as well? Good question. The answer is no, we're not. Just to be clear, SOAR, of course, stands for System Orchestration and Automation Response. And we recently bought a company, a SOAR solution, that we are integrating with our Cloud SIM product. So if we were to talk about it, it would actually be tomorrow's conversation. But we haven't, we've got the product up, the Cloud SOAR product up and available, but we haven't finished building the training materials for it yet. So we're right now, there's nothing, we're not talking about SOAR in any way, shape, or form from a training perspective yet. So Manik, I appreciate the question. Manik, but just going to answer your question honestly and say not today or tomorrow. We won't talk about anything about SOAR. Okay, but obviously we've incorporated SOAR into our Cloud SIM product, and then we'll obviously incorporate it into other aspects of Sumo Logic. So it is on the roadmap. Okay. All right. So when we talk about understanding our observability solution here, again, with monitoring, diagnosing, and troubleshooting, and looking at this information. Now, this particular slide also makes some great test questions. So when we look at monitoring, right, in order to see monitoring, we will have access to logs, to metrics, and to traces. Again, looking at your service levels, your KPIs, that sort of thing. So when you're monitoring, you're going to look at logs, metrics, and traces. When we get into around to diagnosing, we're going to look at logs and traces. You don't necessarily need metrics for diagnosing. Again, we're trying to understand more of a deeper concept of what happened. So as far as a workflow goes, you may have some sort of alert, some sort of gauge, some sort of dashboard. Then as we get into this diagnosing, we look at maybe the deployment or the cluster or the transaction. We've got an Explorer tool that we'll go through and see this with. And then as we start digging in deeper into troubleshooting, we'll get into the service, the pods, the components, and we'll bring in our friend, the Root Cause Explorer. And when we look at troubleshooting, we look at specifically logs, patterns, our raw log data, things along those lines. So from a testing perspective, on the various stages, monitor, diagnosing, and troubleshooting, you need to know that we're going to use for monitoring logs, metrics, and traces, diagnosing logs and traces, troubleshooting just logs. Okay. So I wanted to make you aware of that. And now I'm trying to get that to advance. Okay. This slide is really simply trying to tell you whether you're looking at monitoring, diagnosing, or troubleshooting, we've got something for everybody. So if you're in DevOps or site reliability engineering, we've got some help for you. If you're in software engineering, we've got some help for you. If you're in the security side for DevSecOps, we've got some help for you. So we're simply trying to tell you, based on your role, how this observability can help you. Pure and simple. So to give you an idea of what's happening here, and again, you'll see it firsthand. So regardless of your role, I think we've got something for everybody. Now, little poll activity here. And as I mentioned before, which of the following observability tools make the pillars for that observability solution? There are three choices here, three correct answers. One of them is not correct. But what were the three pillars that made up our observability solution? Feel free to type in the chat box. Feel free to unmute your mic, ask or talk, whichever you want. So a couple folks have put it in the chat. Yep. Logs, metrics, and tracing. There you go. So there you have it. Off to the races we go. Now, this second poll, we have not talked about yet. So the second poll is going to introduce us to our next topic. So again, our logs, metrics, and traces. Again, that's what we're going to use. The second poll here is, when monitoring the request per second of an HTTP service, you notice there's an abrupt spike in traffic, and you want to know what's happening in your system. When looking at this, what are we looking at initially here with our abrupt spike in traffic? Are we looking at traces? Are we looking at logs? Or are we looking at metrics? Which is going to show us this abrupt spike in traffic? Okay. Somebody mentions traces. Nope, that's not quite right. Typically, we're seeing abrupt spike in traffic. Hopefully, we're seeing metrics. There you go. So metrics is going to tell us that we've got some issues here and something we need to look at. So if we see an abrupt spike in traffic, we're going to use metrics. Now, we're also going to use metrics along with something called the root cause explorer to see exactly what is happening. And for this, we're going to go ahead in just a few minutes. We're going to log in, and I'm going to walk you through a case here. So we're going to talk about using metrics and the root cause explorer to determine an issue. Okay. When metrics can be your best option. So I'll tell you what, let me, I'll get into this. I don't want to, we got a lot of slides here and I don't want to do death by PowerPoint. So bear with me. Let me get to the slide that I want for having you guys log in. Okay. So our scenario is you are going to be a DevOps specialist supporting our TravelLogic application. Remember, I mentioned yesterday, we have a TravelLogic application where people can book airfare, hotels, cars, that sort of thing. This TravelLogic application runs on AWS and uses some of the following AWS services: Elastic Load Balancing, Host EC2, DynamoDB, all that good stuff. And we've got, this is a worldwide application. So we run it on the US side, we run it in Europe, we run it all over the place. It says here the end users experienced an outage with a bunch of 5XX errors in the US East 1 region over the last 24 hours. So our mission, should we decide to accept it, is to troubleshoot and determine the root cause of this problem. Now, in order to do this, we need you to log in. So just like yesterday, in fact, if you want to use the same number you used yesterday, that's fine by me. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, what you're going to want to do is fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, and you're going to sit there and type in service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And when you do that, that's going to take you here. And then what I want you to do is pick out a 3-digit number and type it in the chat box. Now, most of you were with me yesterday. You can use that same 3-digit number. That's fine. Okay, don't have a problem with it. But pick a 3-digit number, and you're going to log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number. So just for fun here, I'm going to grab 603, which is the area code here for the state of New Hampshire where I live, at sumologic.com. Don't forget the at sumologic.com. It's got to be an email address. And then the password is new, capital N, year, capital Y, 22, exclamation mark. That is the current password. That password will change in February. And if you need the password, I will gladly provide it. If you want to play around in our training environment, you can do that. Our training environment's open to the public. And I'm putting my contact information in there now, in case you want the password when we change it. I won't know what the password is until we change it. So don't ask me next week what the password is. I won't know yet. Okay. So then you'll be able to click sign in and you'll be able to log in. Okay. So there I am, and I'm now into the Sumo Logic training environment. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is if you're logged in, and I want you all to get logged in, I'd like you, and I'm going to log in with my own credentials in case I have administrative rights on here in case any of you guys have issues. But I want you to raise your hands once you're logged in. So if you would, raise your hands. That way I know that you're all logged in and we're all ready to go. Additionally, our labs in this are in a lab guide. So I am going to upload to the chat box the lab guide. So it's in the process of uploading. So in a few minutes, you'll be up there. Okay, it's already uploaded. So now you should be able to pull it from the lab guide. Now, some of you within your companies have provided restrictions, so you can't download something through Zoom. So again, if you need to, you can go to, bear with me. Here, again, this URL that I posted in the chat box before, and you can download the lab guide from here. Okay, somebody's getting a message when they log in. It says, please verify your credentials. What that message means is it means that you didn't type in the username or the password correctly. So again, it should be training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the password is capital NEW, capital YEAR, 22, exclamation mark. So something's wrong. If you're getting the messages, please verify your credentials. Something's wrong with your login information. Try a different number too if you want. And again, if you have any problems, let us know. Let myself or Taffy know, and we'll gladly take care of you here. By the way, let me rename this one to 10. There we go. Hopefully I got that right.
You got it absolutely spot on, John.
Yay for me. Good deal. Okay, great. All right, looks like everybody who wants to be logged in is logged in. Again, if you're not having problems logging in, please let us know. Okay, that's what we're here for. We want to try to help you. So I'm going to go ahead and lower the attendees' hands. And again, one of the things I did was I uploaded this guide. So here under the observability fundamentals, there is the lab guide, which you can download it from here, or you can download it from my chat box. And it looks like this. So the first thing it talks to you about is how to log in. All right. So again, you logged in. That was lab 0. And then we're going to jump into lab 1. So in lab 1, let me remind you here of our situation. Let me go back to our slide and go back to this panel here. So again, you are a DevOps specialist working in the Travel Logic application. We've had a lot of 5XX errors in the US East 1 over the last 24 hours. And we're going to find out what's causing those 5XX errors. And we are going to isolate and determine a root cause. That is what we are going to do. And quite frankly, we can follow lab 1 for this. So we're going to walk through lab 1. And again, lab 1 has the same basic information right here, right? The lab begins. Now, I'm going to show you the root cause explorer, okay? And then we'll get to it another way. So back to my Sumo logic environment. Let me stop my slides. You go into my Sumo logic environment. And here is my root cause explorer, or here under my new blue button is my root cause explorer. And what the root cause explorer does, and it's really a neat tool, is it's going to look at all of the various events of interest that we have, and it's going to display them across a timeline so I can see what is happening across my environment. Now up here is where I can specify my range of time if I want to. So I'm going to go back 24 hours if you don't mind. And I can see, like I said, the various activity, and I'll take a minute for it to process this and display it out. But I can see here across my time over the last 24 hours, I can see what things are occurring. So let's talk about these. Like I said, it's still processing this, still building it out. But what I have on my x-axis is time. I think we all understand time. My time range is based on this setting right there. Okay. On my y-axis, I have something called drift. What the heck is drift? Drift is basically how far off from its normal value am I? So obviously, the higher I am on my x-axis, the higher my drift. So for example, I can see that this ELB metric stage is 10,000% higher than its normal, okay? And this yellow is a bottleneck. So yellow's a bottleneck, red's an error, these gray things are load. And so now I can see across my environment. And I realize that there's a lot of stuff on here, so it's very busy, it looks very complicated, that sort of thing. But it's really not hard to read. Now, we've taken this kind of 3D look here, and down here we flattened it out. So for example, here, if I have things that are happening concurrently, I can see that they're happening concurrently, the various activities and stuff that are happening concurrently. Now, I mentioned to you that the test for this certification is going to take a lot of stuff off of the documentation. So let's go to our documentation. That's help.sumologic.com, help.sumologic.com. And then here, if I go into our observability solution, hang on a second, where is it? Bear with me a second, folks. I'll tell you what. Let me just do a search for root cause explorer. Okay. Root cause explorer right here. So my root cause explorer, like I said, is under our observability solution chapter under root cause explorer. This one page right here, and you'll see it's a pretty long page. If I look at the scroll bar there, lots of stuff. This one page has a bunch of test questions, all right? So I would recommend, in fact, I am going to copy this URL. And as before, I am going to paste it in. Okay. So in here, there's a lot of different questions. All right. So lots of different answers to questions and stuff like that. So again, here's my events of interest, my error, my availability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My events of interest are also called EOIs. And it again walks us through some of the stuff, how to access this, how to change settings, all kinds of test questions and stuff like that are in here. Search filters, which I'm going to explain in just a second. looking at Kubernetes information, zooming in, stats, filters, all kinds of stuff is in here. Now, back to this. So again, I've got a lot of information here across all of my entire organization, right? All of my environments and stuff like that. I can go up here, I can click here, and I can start filtering for things, right? So I can go into my account ID, pick a specific account ID, pick a specific region if I want to. I can grab like US East 1, and then I can grab, specific entity types, specific things I'm looking for, your entities or entity types, various instances and things like that. And so I can filter. So we can filter by AWS and host. We can filter by Kubernetes information. We can filter by application services. And then there's some other things that we can filter by. Now, again, I can select various values and that filter would be applied. Or if I want to not apply that filter, I can move this filter slider switch to the left, in which case I would see everything again. It's basically turning off this filter. Or if I want to reset my filter, I can click on the trash can, and that will remove anything I've put in here as a filter. As far as these filters down here, again, I can filter by percentage of drift. So I can filter my values of drift if I want to. I can filter based on my duration, which is the start and stop, the X across the X axis here. My seasonality percentage, I can filter based on that, and my stability. And as I mentioned before, you'll find that when you're looking for things like stability and seasonality and stuff like that, those answers are right here in the documentation. So you can, I can, we can use this documentation to understand what seasonality is, okay? Stability, intensity, stuff along those lines. So this is our root cause explorer. Now, additionally, I can click on something in my root cause explorer, and now it focuses on that particular object. So here I'm looking at a particular, my deployment, my bottleneck here, my AWS ELB metric stage. The metric I'm looking at here is deployment and CPU utilization. I can see my stats, my drift, my start, my end. But when I click on it, I can also see the metric value here. I can see the information that makes this up. And if I go into my entities tab, I can see and I can open this up in other parts of the Sumo Logic toolset. So I can go right into my logs if I want to look at the logs around this entity, or I can go into this entity dashboard. So I can go from here about this particular object into some of the other tools we have at Sumo. So let me get kind of caught up here on the into the questions here. So, okay. So Dave asked a question here. It looks like our root cause explorer is only available right now for AWS and Kubernetes, but not Google Cloud Platform and Azure. Is that correct? That is correct, but we are working on that. So those are things that are kind of important to us. Okay. And I think that gets us caught up on the questions. Now, back to our troubleshooting. So I wanted to introduce the root cause explorer. We're going to get into this in just a little bit. But the way we're going to approach this, again, per the directions, and let me get to my directions. So remember, here's our lab one, here's our directions. What they really want us to do is they want us to go into explore by and look at our AWS observability solution. So we're going to go and click on our new blue button here, sorry. And we're going to click explore. And here, for those of you who've never taken our Kubernetes classes, we used to have just a bunch of different Kubernetes nodes, service node, deployment node, that sort of thing. Now we've got some other views and monitoring and other things that we have in here. And so the one we want is AWS observability. So we're going to select AWS observability. This now shows us all of the environments that we can use for AWS. We've got a prod environment, we got a dev environment, we got a numbered environment up here. For those of you who want to know how to set this up, we actually have a CloudFormation template that you can use to spawn your AWS environment, and it will automatically add it into this AWS observability, automatically install your collectors, all that cool stuff. And we teach that, by the way, in the observability admin class. So that's how we teach you how to set this stuff up. Right now, we're going to focus on what this stuff is. So here in my AWS observability, you may recall we at DevOps Specialists, we're supposed to focus on prod. We are supposed to focus on US East 1. So I can see here underneath my environment, there's prod. Underneath that, I've got my regions. I'm going to grab US East 1. Under that, I can see these various services here that are running, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Here, I can see my AWS region overview. I can look at my gateway request. I can see here that I've got a bunch of issues with my Elastic Load Balancer. I can also see that I'm getting some gateway issues. And I can, as I said, go down here and get a good idea overview of what's happening. Now, in this dashboard, so when we install this, when you install this as part of Sumo Logic, not only does it come with this one dashboard, it actually comes with several dashboards, all right? So what we want to do is we want to choose AWS region events of interest. Now, let me get back to the directions here just to make sure we know where we are. So we did lab 1, we did this part, we did US East 1 under prod. We turned the page, that got us to here. Then we are going to go into the right pane and select AWS regions of interest. And this is going to take us and show us a root cause explorer. Now, this is not the real Root Cause Explorer product. This is a dashboard of Root Cause Explorer. But you'll notice that it's filtering for my prod, it's filtering for my region. And here I can see that I have some sort of an error, a Lambda resource error. And I have another Lambda resource error going. And before that, I have another.
Just placed an order for the biryani.
Is there a question? Somebody's got their mic open.
Yeah, can you add more masala? I don't know mobile number.
Let me take care of that little problem. Okay. All right. Now, again, these two are kind of off by themselves. These three kind of have a recurring pattern. So this is the issue I'm going to troubleshoot. Here, when I look at this, I put my cursor over this. I see that I'm getting a lot. The metric is HTTP code ELB 5XX count sum. So this is my 5XX error. This one here, this one here. And I can see that they're preceded by this one, or this one, which happens to be an EC2 instance bottleneck. And then this EC2 instance, as my load average, my CPU, is preceded by a DynamoDB bottleneck. My read throttle events. If I look at the metric, it says read throttle events sum. And so I've got an issue here with my read throttle events on DB2. So this read throttle event is causing this, which is causing this. And that's why I'm getting these 5XX errors. I don't know if you guys can very clearly see across your current environments right now, but to see the relationship between these microservices is phenomenal in my mind. It's just absolutely phenomenal. All right. Now, what I do want to do is I do want to go into the real root cause explorer. So this is a dashboard of the root cause explorer. If I click, remember there's the more action button up here, there's the more action button down here. This more action button says I can open this up in my root cause explorer. So now I'm in my root cause explorer. Now I can change my filters. Now I can adjust. Now I can see things. If you'll just give us a second, it's resolving the query and it's going to show us our data points here in just a second. There's one. Obviously, we need to work on the performance of this just a little bit. All right. And then I'll see it in just a second over here. But again, here I have my HTTP 500 code. Here again, I've got my EC2 instance bottleneck. Here I've got my DynamoDB. And like I said, we'll see that pattern show up here in just a few seconds. It's still rerunning the query. Now, again, because this is the full root cause explorer, I can click on this DynamoDB, and because again, this caused this, which caused this. So I'm going back to the earliest event, and I should see here in a second my metrics. There we go. I can see my metrics here, my read throttle events. So I'm looking at three things: my read throttle event here, my read throttle event from 1 day ago, my read throttle event from 7 days ago. Today it's spiked. Right now it's spiked. A day ago it did not spike like it did here. And then 7 days ago it did not spike like it did here. So I can see that metric and how it's behaving. Now again, let me get back to our documentation. I'm sorry, back to our directions here. So we selected, again, our events of interest. And then in our events of interest, we opened it up in the root cause explorer. Now we're looking at the root cause explorer. And again, we see that we've got our 5xx error, which takes us back to this, which takes us back to our DynamoDB. So we're troubleshooting and seeing the flow here. We click on this DynamoDB. Again, we see our metric information. From that metric information, if I want to, I can take and I can select an area that I want to magnify, just to filter a little bit here. So I can change my x-axis here a little bit, but just to magnify it if I want to. But ultimately, what I want to do is take this metric and I want to go to entities and I want to explore this some more. So here I want to go into my entities over here, and I want to go into my entity inspector. So entity, open in, I want to open this back in my entity dashboard. So it's going to take me back to my Explorer. This time, instead of putting me at US East 1, it's going to take me into my DynamoDB database. And you'll notice here that I've actually got 4 connections to my DynamoDB database. So what I'm going to do real quick is look through these 4 connections and see where I've got read throttling. So here I have some read throttling. Here I've got some read throttling. These all look good. So trying to figure out which one of these 4 connectors is giving me grief. Okay. So here, like I said, I've got some read throttling. Now, back to my directions for a second. What I want to do is I want to go up here, and instead of looking at capacity planning, I want to look at my events. So I've selected the right connector, the connector that's got issues, and I want to go into my events. And here I can see in my events over time, I have 2 errors. Now, I don't know how many DBAs I have in the class, but if I've got a read throttling error, that can be, and typically it's created because somebody went in and changed a setting on the table. So somebody updated the table, and that's usually what causes this. And so what I want to do is I want to find who did that. who did my update table. And there's lots of different ways I can do this, right? I could go into this and I could go into the log query, or I could go into this top errors and go into my log query. And hopefully I can find out who the user was that did this. In per our directions, what it wants me to do is to go down here to our top errors and open that query up. So down here in my top errors, I can open this query up. I can open it up in a search. So now it's looking at my logs. And I have two messages here. And in these two messages, I can see that Carol did an update table, changing my write capacity units. And Duke Ha also did the same sort of thing. So now I've got an idea of who changed the table. Let's see if we get the table changed back and ultimately resolve this issue. So we were able to go from root cause explorer, we could see the relationship between things and basically go through and see through various dashboards and various things what's happening. And ultimately it took us to our logs. And our logs told us what actually had occurred, who made the changes. And by the way, if I want to, in these logs, I can also, if I need to, filter for the specific event name of update table, but this one only has the event name of update table. Let me digress for a second. I took top errors. I could have grabbed table events here too and opened that one up as a log search. The problem is when I do that, I've got 12 results. Some of these are update tables, some of these are create tables, that sort of thing. I could go into my message tab here and my field browser, and I can look for my event name. Now, as I said, for those of you who are DBAs, database administrators, you know that in order to make the change here that affects my table, somebody did an update table, okay? When they did the update table, so I want to filter for update table messages only. And now I can go in here and again, I can see who made those changes and talk to them about why they made those changes, get them to change it back. So giving you an idea of how the tools work. Any questions that y'all have?
Sorry, John, I don't have any questions, but just a quick one. I do need to pop out from the meetings for a while. We do have Bryn, who will be taking over as the SE that will be supporting the search cam. So I will catch you later.
Okay.
But again, to everyone, my contact details are within the chat. I will add them before I leave again. I will catch up with you folks later. Thank you so much.
No problem. Great, thanks. And Bryn, welcome. All right.
Yes.
So there are questions? Okay. Somebody asked, can we drill down to reveal additional information within that table? It depends. If you set up that dashboard, yes, you can. So, but typically when you're looking at a table here, you're looking at the lowest level of information, the logs. But from a dashboard, from your Explorer, yes, you could click on something, create a link that takes you to another dashboard, takes you to another thing, and be able to drill down into those sort of things. So it really depends on where you set this up. Okay. I hope that answers your question. I realize I'm not being very specific, but I am trying to talk in general terms here. So it's set up. All right. One other thing I wanted to mention to you, this root cause explorer supports 6 troubleshooting concepts. And again, these 6 troubleshooting concepts make a great test question. So one is abnormal spikes. Abnormal spikes indicate an underlying problem, requires closer attention. It also provides a troubleshooting concept of context and correlation. Again, we're looking at these spikes within the context and correlation. Remember, we saw the 5XX errors, which took us back to the bottleneck, which took us back to the DynamoDB. Context and correlation. Third one here is connections. I can also see the connections between my resources to help me pinpoint that. You'll see that in just a little bit. We talk about the service map. And then also concept 4 here, earlier spikes. Earlier spikes are closer to the root cause of the issue. Ultimately, concept 5 here is exploring of the logs. Logs show us what is really going on. And then the last concept is the Amazon golden signals. So we've got some golden signals that are recognized as golden signals, which help organize, root cause, explore. Now, these 6 troubleshooting concepts, I mentioned earlier that in this root cause explorer URL, which holds a lot of answers to a lot of questions, these 6 concepts are also described in here on this URL. So as I said before, if you don't already have this, I put it in the chat box. You probably want to bookmark it because there's going to be lots of test questions here dealing with this information. Okay. So we've got our first little exercise done there. And basically now what we're going to do is move on to another concept here. But before I do that, I propose that we take a 10-minute break. So if you don't mind, let me start my little 10-minute timer. And I'll see you when this timer gets down to 0. Okay. Karthik, I'm going to answer your question when we come back from break. So good question. I will talk about it when we come back. Thanks. Everybody have a good break. I'm going to step away myself. And I am going to grab some coffee. So see you in 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
Hi, John.
Hey, folks, this is John. Welcome back. So a question was asked, and again, Steve did a great job of answering it. Does the data from these dashboards, come from an agent, or how does that happen? You may recall yesterday that we talked about collectors. And so if I go into my Sumo Logic training environment, and if I go in here to manage data, and if I go in, give me a second here and they'll show up. Well, wakey here. There we go. So when you set up the AWS observability solution using the cloud formation template, it automatically creates all of these collectors, all of these sources and stuff for you. And therefore, this is where that information comes from. Now, If there's some additional customization that you need to make, you can certainly do that. But I will say that out of the box, this is going to probably capture about 90% of what you need. There's a CloudFormation template that you use. And again, if I go into our documentation, and here in our documentation, if I go into our observability solution and setting up collection for our observability solution, this goes into a great deal more detail. And so you can see how this stuff gets set up. All right. So I hope that answers the question again with what the other folks put in there. So let's talk about the next conversation, the next topic here. And that is, let's talk about monitoring and metrics. Okay. So another poll activity, right? This is something we're going to talk about. We haven't gotten there yet. Apps using micro-based or microservice-based architecture use distributed platforms. Absolutely true, right? They typically have different layers of infrastructure. Again, also a true statement. Which observability tool or technique do you think would help us to deal with transaction level tracking? So we want to look at transaction level tracking and see what's going on. Okay. Okay. Somebody mentions logs, and logs will ultimately tell us why things have gone wrong. But initially, when we're looking at transaction level tracking, we're looking at traces and tracing. So that's what we're going to talk about next. The tracing capabilities of Sumo Logic. So tracing is one of our 3 pillars. We've added it, right? Metrics typically look for only known conditions, right? We don't know that we've got an unknown condition here. And so therefore, we really want to see where things are breaking down. And that's where tracing is going to help us up, okay? We're going to use tracing, and that's why we added tracing as that 3rd pillar. So what is tracing, right? You may, when a user logs in, right, they may go from their various, client to an authentication point on their server, to a specific multi-factor authentication system, to authenticating that system, and then logging in. They could go anywhere across this to log in. Maybe some of these are working, maybe some of these aren't. We need to be able to see through what's working, what's not working, what paths work, what paths don't work. And for that, we have incorporated tracing into our product, okay? Tracing is, root cause explorer for us is something different than tracing. Tracing allows us to see the flow of a transaction. So we're going to use transactional tracing to locate failures, improve performance, and go from there, okay? When we look at our AWS infrastructure, for example, that was our root cause explorer. When we look at our application components and our platform technologies, this is where tracing kind of comes into play. Okay. So again, if you think of tracing, the easiest analogy to use is shipping a package, right? I ship a package from myself here in the East Coast of the United States to maybe the United Kingdom, somewhere in London. I can see every place it went along the way. I can see what happened. And if there's a delay, I can typically see that when I'm looking here at the information. I can see all the points that went across. I can look that sort of thing. For us, tracing is the same sort of thing, only it's done across the microservices. So if we think about it, right, a user may log in, certain activity goes on, they may place an order, again, certain activity may go on, they pay a bill, certain activities may go on, they log out. So you can see all the various, they're placing their order, they selected an object, they confirmed they wanted that object, they placed the order, so forth and so on. The order committed to the database, that sort of thing. You can see all the various steps that occurred. So for this, we're going to talk about Sumo Logic Coffee. Sumo Logic Coffee provides a great cup of coffee. There are thousands of locations around the world. You might know Sumo Logic Coffee best by some green labeled company, which is of course copyrighted quite extensively. So we can't use that company name, but we can use our own company name, Sumo Logic Coffee. So think that green labeled company, but think Sumo Logic Coffee. And if we look at what happens when somebody places an order, right, in Sumo Logic Coffee, right? Customer says, hey, I want a cup of coffee. The order posts to the barista. The barista initiates the coffee machine. The machine checks make sure it's got beans to grind, and then grinds those beans. It checks the water levels and adds water. Then we give the customer, the coffee is ready for the customer. The customer then pays for their order. The credit card is approved, and then the customer picks up their order. So each one of these steps represents a microservice. And so what we want to do is we want to see if we're having problems with some of these microservices and see how Sumo Logic can help us with regards to this stuff. So tracing is mainly used for doing kind of root cause analysis on transactional based systems where the transaction has failed. Okay, so that's where we use this tracing. So for example, we got Abel. Abel's a coffee lover and he orders coffee from the Sumo app. When he orders coffee from the Sumo app, we have a service map that he can see which major systems he's playing with. And we can see how long these systems took. So that's the coffee service that grinds the beans and adds the water. And that took about 4.2 milliseconds, and then took a total of 9 milliseconds. The payment system, it took about 5 milliseconds to calculate the total, and then write to the records and get approval from the PCI system. So tracing tells us what happened. You and I think about customer orders coffee and the barista delivers coffee, but in reality, there's a lot of things that happen to make this up, right? How long is it taking to deliver that coffee, right? So client orders coffee. How long did it take to receive the order? How long did it take to produce the coffee? How long did it take to send that back? So we can see for delays, we can see issues there. We can also see what happens if something happens along the process. So you're going to find that when we get in and investigate this, we're going to have things called spans and traces. First of all, your trace is the entire transaction. So that's going to be one trace ID. I place an order for a cup of coffee. All the little steps it has to go through is one trace, but it's a series of spans. So spans are a subset of my trace ID. Again, I ordered coffee, sent to the barista, machine check to see if I can grind the beans. Do I have beans to grind? Yes, I do. Grind the beans. That's another step. So these are all spans. And so within Sumo Logic, we can see these with the help of service maps and with the help of our traces. So without any further ado, let me stop my slides. Let's also take a moment and look at our documentation. We are going to do a lab 2 now, tracing in the Sumo Logic Coffee app. And tracing in the Sumo Logic Coffee app is going to have us go into Sumo Logic. Again, you've already logged in. I've got a bunch of tabs open here from the last lab. I'm going to close all those tabs. I can click on any one of these tabs where the more action button is, the 3 vertical dots, and I can say close all tabs. Okay, I don't need them open. Let's close them up. Now, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the new blue button. This time we're going to go to the service map. So when I click on the service map, I can see all the transaction systems here that I have got going on. So here, if I kind of draw around here a little bit, I can see here I've got the Coffee Bar app, which consists of my machine service, my coffee bean grinding service, my water service, so forth. So my transaction service, it takes care of the transactions, all that stuff. Over here to the right, I've got some sort of a payment service. And then I also have some other miscellaneous little services out here that we have used to set up when we do the admin class. And we show you how you can incorporate and set up open telemetry to bring data into these transaction services. So that's what those are, just miscellaneous. Now, what I want to do is I want to filter for the coffee bar application. So here under application name, I can click on coffee bar app. And now it's only going to show me things associated with my coffee bar app. Now you notice I got a bunch of red circles, and of course our eyes are trained for red and we think red is bad, and that's absolutely true. My size of my circles represent the request per second. Makes a great test question. So the larger the circle, the more the request per second. And then, like I said, I can see the relationship between various things. So also where I see cloud, I'm going out to some other system that's taking care of things for us. So the cloud tells me what I'm going to, otherwise I've got these various services. So I see we've got a question here, okay? Can we color code coffee bars differently? The red is denoted by any abnormalities that we detect. I'm not sure if you can change that. So good question. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Now, let me take a moment here and go over here to my settings. And again, I've got some control over my settings, but I don't think I've got that type of control. So don't think so. I got to check. So yeah, good question. Make a great product enhancement if you can give us a good, strong use case. Now, what I want to do here is I want to look at these various transactions. I can click on my coffee bar if I wanted to. I can click on my coffee machine, my machine service, my water service. Per the directions in here, they want us to go out here and grab, I think, the coffee service. So I'm going to put my cursor over the coffee service right here. And you'll notice I got a tooltip that says, yes, okay, we got latest 15-minute KPIs and gives me some requests and errors and all that good stuff. But I can click on this service. And when I click on this service, again, it opens up this side panel showing me my latency, my requests per seconds, my errors, all that good stuff. And if I want to here, I can open this up in something else. Now, typically for my service map, I can open this up in traces. So when I click on traces, now it is showing me my coffee bar app and specifically the service coffee service. And I can see all the different coffee service activity that's happened over this range of time. Specifically, a couple things I can look for here. I can see the number of spans that I have. I can see the duration, so I can look for long durations to see what's happening there. But most importantly here, I can also look to see the number of errors. I can see the number of errors. Now, just for fun, I'm going to click on this one. I've got one of these down here that says 402. I'm going to go ahead and click on that 402, this one right here, and I can click anywhere on here. It doesn't make any difference, but it's going to open up and show me the spans and the traces that make this up. So now I'm looking at my specific spans. And you'll notice here I've got different colors for my different parts of my services. So for example, my payment service will be in one color. My coffee bar service will be in another color. All my different microservices are going to be in different colors. Down here, you'll see I've got things with red lines. Those red lines denote where I've had errors, where I've got problems. And what I want to do is try to find the lowest object with the red line. And that will indicate to me where my problem is. So I'm going to go over here where my payment system is. This green, and it says my cash desk. And here's my red line. Now the test question here for you. This error spans only. When I throw this switch, it kind of grays out anywhere I don't have errors. So it grays out anywhere I do not have errors. I only see the error spans.
I think someone in the chat has just was asking you to repeat the bit just earlier, I think.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So let me go back here for a second. Okay. So again, I was at the service map. And again, here my service map, I can pick whatever service is that I want. The directions in the book has us use the coffee service. So I click on that. That brings out my sidebar. And in my sidebar, I can say, I want to open this up in something else, one of the other tools in our arsenal. We want to open this up in traces. So that opens up my traces tab and shows me for this application, for this specific service, all the various activities. And in these various activities, here are the various trace IDs. Here's the service, whether it's from the Coffee Bar app or the front end of the app, what the operation was, time, duration, number of spans, number of errors, status code. Okay. Now I went down here and I tried to find the one that has a 402 on it. And I'm going to click on the one that has a status code of 402. And I click anywhere on that. That opens this up. So that's how I got where I got. Now, here, as I said, all my different colors are my different microservices. So when you see these different colors, they represent different microservices, a test question, all right? Additionally, there's the switch here. When I throw the switch, it kind of grays out anywhere I do not have an error. An error is denoted by this red line on top, okay? If you do not see this switch, test question, if you do not see this switch, there are no errors in your span. That's why the switch is not there, okay? In order to have the switch, you got to have errors. Now, what I want to do to troubleshoot this is I want to go down to the lowest level. So there's sort of a hierarchy here, right? This is the parent, this is the child, this is the parent, this is the child, this is the parent, this is the child. So I'm going to go down to this payment system, this green one. And if I click on it, again, a side panel opens up where I can see the summary information about this. This is a status code of 402, start time, end time, all that good stuff. I can see the various metadata associated with this under the metadata tags. I can also see various entities and various values of my metric. But most important, I can open up this span ID or this trace ID. Now remember, all of this here is one trace ID, but each of these different steps is a span ID. So if I click to open logs for that specific span ID, I don't get any results. Okay, terrific. I love it when technology gives me a little grief. Bear with me. Okay. Let's try some. Let's try a 404 here. We grab a 404. Let me go to my lowest level object here, my machine service. There we go. Open my span ID up. Oh, come on. Hang on. Let me try one other thing here. Let me go back the step before. Okay. What it is, I should see log entries here. And I should see the cause and issue of my log entry. So bear with me one more time. Let me try. Grab the 402. Okay, one more time. Okay, something is going on with our training environment. It's not feeding the logs properly. But what I would detect is I should see some log entries when I click on this. I should see some logs that says, oh, okay, we've calculated the payment and now the customer's card has been declined, all right? Or, gee, I got a request to grind the beans and I don't have any beans to grind. So it will tell us what the actual errors are. And so by going to those logs, I can actually see what happened. And like I said, right now, apparently in our training environment, there was an issue of trying to get those logs into here. I don't know. I'll have to check into that. So my apologies. But that's what we're trying to show you. And I think you would agree with me that the ability to see in a transaction-based service, the relationship between my services, which are showing abnormalities, and being able to investigate that is really kind of neat. Just for fun, let me just go over here to my water service. And let me go into my water service here in my traces. And let's see if I can get some log information there. So here in my water service, let me grab my 404. Let me grab my machine service there. Let me open my logs. Okay, yeah, something's wrong. So I'll have to play with that. Apologize for that. But I should see some log entries there. Okay. And that is lab number 2. Now, the next conversation here are when our logs are best bet for observability. Okay, when are logs really try to help us out? So bear with me a second here. Trying to catch up here. There we go. Okay, so with the help of metrics, we get an indicator that something is wrong with our app. We now want to figure out why something is wrong. And we all know that the right logs tell us why something broke down. So we're going to do lab 3 here and talk about observability in logs. We're going to see something going wrong here, and it's going to tell us what's happening. So when our logs are best bet, and again, they'll always typically tell us why. So in lab 3, we're a member of US East 1, just like we were before. We're looking at the last 24 hours, and we've got an issue with our Lambda service. Our Lambda service is starting to throw errors, and we want to understand why we are seeing this and what happened. So we are going to, per the directions here in lab 3, in fact, let me just close this up. There we go. So we're going to go into our new Explorer like we did before. We're going to go into prod US East 1, and we're going to look at our AWS. Here we go. I'm going to close up all my extraneous tabs just because I don't need them. Click on my new button here, click Explore. Again, we want AWS observability. We want prod. We want US East 1. This time, we want to find Lambda because we're getting Lambda errors. So here, I'm clicking on my AWS Lambda, and I can see here's some performance information, errors versus yesterday, throttlers, where my callers are using this. I can see my successes and failures, and that's what we want to focus on here. I've generated in this last 24 hours, 7,862 errors. Not good. But if I look at my top error messages in the last 24 hours, my get billing information generated 718 of them. And it even tells me there's an issue with database authentication. Now, again, that's this one function. There's other functions here that are generating errors as well. But let's take this one problem at a time. So what I want to do is I want to filter this dashboard for my get billing information. So I've typed get, I then select my get billing information, and it will automatically refresh all these panels to focus and show me information just about that piece. Okay. And then, so again, I went into US East 1, went into Lambda, right? It displays my audit and performance information. I can see the stuff that's there. We focused on this error area here. And then we filtered for our get billing information. And in our get billing information, we can see, quite frankly, that our issue here is our database authentication, right? And so we need to get our database authentication fixed. I could, if I want to, open this up in a log search. And I could see I've got 718 of these messages where I've got invalid credentials, and I could see the actual underlying raw messages. But bottom line is I can quickly see in my logs what my problem is. I've got somewhere in my app, I put in some invalid credentials, and therefore it is hanging on those invalid credentials. Got to fix this. Okay. Fix the credentials, problem goes away. And that is lab 3. Now, also in lab 4, another area that we can use logs for are areas where we can take advantage of some of the advanced functionality within Sumo logic. Again, as far as observability, let me show you what I mean. In lab 4, I'm going to go ahead and create myself a new log search. And here in my log search, I'm going to grab a source category of labs / my snort logs. Now, for those of you not familiar with snort, it's a firewall application. Let me go back here for 24 hours. And it shows me security issues associated with my network. Okay. So I have a web application attack, attempted information leak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, in the last 24 hours, I received over 151,000 messages. Okay. I don't want to look at each individual message. I want to use the power of Sumo logic to help me here. So I can use this log reduce button that when I click on it, I think I mentioned this yesterday, but what log reduce will do is it will combine my like messages together. And so here I can see, and it's still processing, still digesting those last 24 hours of log messages. And when it's all said and done, I will see a count of how many, my more significant ones are. So it's still chewing on it. Takes about 30 seconds or so. And it's got to re-ingest these to combine them. There we go, done. It took 46 seconds. All right, now, out of this 151,000 log messages, 78,000 are this issue. Somebody tried to modify a config.conf file. Well, you know what? When I investigate this and look into this, because this happened obviously a lot of times in the last 24 hours, this was, we did an update to a software application that needed to modify that file on everybody's machine. So that's what it was. It wasn't really an error, a security issue as much. So what I can do is I can actually click on this to demote it and give it a relevant score of 0, which basically says it's really not an issue. It was done inadvertently. When somebody updated a software, modified this file, the snort activities, we determined that file was modified due to a normal upgrade, not somebody trying to modify it for malicious reasons. But you can, I can, we can either leave these alone and it will generate a relevant score based on the count and stuff like that. Or I can also promote it to a high value of 10. So the range here of relevance is 0 to 10. So I can go through here and I can start evaluating these things and saying, are these really things I need to worry about? Are these malicious? Are these unintentional? That sort of thing, using this log reduce. Now, another thing I can do is I can also use a log compare. Because log reduce will combine my logs, in this case, over the last 24 hours. But what I'm looking to see is, how was this compared to, say, last week? And so I can click on log compare here, and you'll notice it shifts it back 24 hours. Let me actually change it, if you don't mind, to 7 days. right? 7D. And so now what it's going to do is it's going to look at the last 24 hours, do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to go back 7 days and then do a 24-hour log reduce on that. And then it's going to compare the two. So what this is showing me is this is showing me if things have gotten bad or things are improving. Because when we're typically looking at security things, we're trying to figure out, we can check day-to-day trends. Now, maybe when you compare days, you want to compare today with yesterday. That's only going back 24 hours. But for me, I find that my Wednesdays are like my previous Wednesdays. My Wednesdays are not like my Tuesdays or my Mondays. But my Wednesdays are like my Wednesdays. My Mondays are like my Mondays. And so I always go back about 7 days. And again, you adjust this to whatever you think is right. But what this is doing is it's now showing me, and again, it's got to go through this process. It'll take a little time. But it now shows me what my percentage of change is over here. And these percentages of changes are pretty insignificant, right? They're fairly low, which is good. It makes me feel real good about things. I'm going to jump to the end of this stack for a second. I want to point out 2 words. The word gone means it was there previously, the period of time ago, 7 days ago in my case, but it's not there now. So if I see the word gone, it means it was there, but it's not there anymore. Also, if I see the word new, that means it wasn't there previously, but it is there now. So I can see the word gone or the word new, or I'll see a percentage. Now, this 98% looks very high, very alarming, but in reality, it's only 2 points. So, 197 is only 3 points. If we get into some real serious numbers where we've got, 1,000, that's probably a much better sample size. So my point is, in lab 4, working with logs, you can use the log reduce operator and the log compare operator to kind of get a sense for what's happening. And here is where I'm doing that exercise on page 29. And then on page 30, I can also use my log compare. Okay. There's also a log explain operator. Now, what the log explain operator is going to do is it's going to compare your results with a known sample. So, for example, I'm at this code right here, and I am going to copy this code, and I'm going to grab myself a new log search, and I am going to paste this code, and I'm going to make this go back about 24 hours. And I'm going to run this code, and let's see what we get. Able to parse, do the JSON. Give me a second here. The editor managed to do some word wrapping for me. Oops. Let's try this again. What do I see? Okay, I think we got it squared away. What the heck is the problem here? There we go. Good. All right. So here's our results. So what it's doing is it's showing me if my AWS region is US West 1, my control coverage value versus my test coverage value, I can see the various relevance. Now within US East 1, I can see I've got certain event names, get bucket policy with a different source IP or a different username. And again, I can see my log explain shows me the difference between a control set And my data is what log explain does. It shows me the difference here of what's happening as far as the difference, a delta, if you will, what's changed. And so hopefully it gives you some idea of some of the tools that you can use to help yourself with observability. Let me kind of wrap things up here a little bit, and we will get on our way. Get you guys a chance to take the exam. So again, in observability, we can look at the app from the outside and understand what's happening inside of it, right? You can track transactions end to end to see what's going on. Metrics provide a deeper visibility and insight to understand the cause of a spike, right? See what's happening. Logs always tell us why, what the fault is, that sort of thing. And then, of course, logs, metrics, and traces become the foundation of our observability, our pillars of observability, okay? If you want to know how to set this stuff up, there is an observability administration class, which is also 3 hours, where we show you how to set up an AWS observability solution using a CloudFormation template, and it builds everything out, all your collectors, builds out all your dashboards, does everything you need to do. We also talk about configuring and deploying a custom Kubernetes cluster and then setting up telemetry on that Kubernetes cluster, as well as setting up tracing points using OpenTelemetry, which we tend to use. There's one other thing I want to show you in the product that we haven't incorporated in the class yet, but one other thing I think you'll find helpful. If I go back to my Explorer tab for a second, here in my Explorer tab, we've got another function here called Real User Monitoring. How many of you have created an application or some web app or something like that, and you want to know from the user's perspective how that application is behaving? That's what Real User Monitoring allows us to do. So Real User Monitoring on a web-based application, we can see how long it's taking to load pages, how many requests it's getting, what type of browsers this is working on, what type of operating systems, where the geolocations are, and how long they're taking. I can also see my website performance, everything from the time to resolve my DNS, to the time to process my first part of my first page, to the time to process my images. I can see where my bottlenecks and stuff are. So this is something that we've also added to our product, Real User Monitoring. You won't see it on the test. We haven't incorporated it in the class yet, but we will. So I just wanted to show you that. And again, that's in your Explorer tab under Real User Monitoring. So there's a question. Go ahead. What's your question, sir? This is just something I wanted to point out. Okay. Okay. So the question is, how can we configure custom apps like the coffee bar app to help to create and configure? What you're going to do is you're going to set up telemetry in those. Okay. And so in setting up telemetry, and we teach this in the fundamentals, the observability admin class, we show you how you can create using OpenTelemetry those that information that goes into your traces and your service map and all that sort of thing. So my advice is take that class, or if you don't have time to take that class, again, let me go out to our documentation. And here in our documentation, if I go into our observability solution, and if I, hang on a second. Can't remember if OpenTelemetry is here. I think OpenTelemetry is someplace else. Hold on. OpenTelemetry, there we go. Forgot which chapter it's in. Okay. But here is where I don't want to get into that detail, but here's where you can set up your open telemetry, and here's the instructions for it, how to configure it. That open telemetry that you're setting up will allow you to see those spans, those traces, and all that sort of thing. We use the open telemetry standard. So to answer your question, this is the documentation for setting up traces and setting me for a second is visualization alerts. Hang on a second. Explore. Trying to find, and I'm just having a brain cramp. Oh, let's try traces. There we go. Traces. Getting started with transaction traces. There we go. Here's how you set up the collection for those, whether you're using AWS or you're using other environments. And here's the instructions for setting that stuff up for your traces. So there's what I was looking for. And again, we get into this in the admin class, the observability administration class. Okay. So it says a real scenario also requires custom apps and collectors. Yes, it does. And what you'll do is you will create a collector, a hosted collector for this. And then you will actually, tell you what, give me a second here. So the collector is a fairly easy component. Okay, let me just fix that real quick here. Let me just resolve this. So you can, I can, we can add a hosted collector. I'm going to type in hotel for open telemetry. And then I'm going to add a data source. And here's what I'm going to use, HTTP traces. And so this is how I get the data brought in here. I set up this collector. This collector is going to have a URL. I will embed that URL into my open telemetry stuff. So this is how we set it up. We've made it fairly easy to set up, but you know, it's going to require a bit of work, a little bit of work. So I want to be honest with you. And then of course the dashboards and stuff. Okay. Somebody's making the point, it would be helpful if I could explain how to collect data from a real database or a server in real time. Okay. Also, somebody would like to know the sizing and bandwidth requirements for a 100 device integration. As far as the 100 device integration, I'm going to let let our SC here who's on the call deal with that and help you with that, because that's not going to be a simple, you know, is there a sizing document and stuff? That's what I'm going to let them help you with. But typically our sizing is something that, as far as setup collection, that's fairly simple. And I'll take a moment. Again, we teach in our admin class, but I'm not going to split hairs with you. If I want to add a collector, again, it's either if it's hosted, if it's on the cloud, we're going to use this. If it's on a prem system, I'm going to use this collector. Okay. I'll assume it's on a hosted environment. And again, I'm going to name this something. Okay. This collector is just a placeholder. It holds a place for me to add sources. If I choose not to add a source at this time, I can go in later and add a source. Now, what sources do I want, right? You mentioned a database collector, right? So again, what sort of database here am I dealing with, right? Say what? Again, these are all web-based environments. Let me shift gears for a second. I have on my Mac a collector. Okay. Oops, I don't have a collector. I thought I did. I don't. Okay. Bear with me a second, folks. I usually do. I must have deleted it. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to find a hosted collector. Or I'm sorry, installed collector. So with an installed collector, that's to say that's a Java app running on somebody's machine, right? On an environment. On that, you can add a source. And so here in your source is where you would add the various databases, remote files, and all that fun stuff. This is where you would select that source, or you could also add a hosted database source out there. Remember us, for us, a database, anything that generates logs is a source. And so we're not going to grab the database and bring that in. We're going to brag the logs for the database and bring that in. So we want the database, the logs for that database. That's what we're going to bring in. That's what we're going to ingest. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. All right. The other thing I want to do is get you guys over to your exam. So hopefully you all were with me yesterday when I explained this. But if you weren't, I need you to log out of our training environment. Why? Because you're logged in as training analyst with some crazy number. You're not logged in with your credentials, right? You're not logged in with your name. And I want to make sure you get credit for taking the exam. So log out of our training environment by clicking on the lower left corner where your training analyst is and choose sign out. Then you're going to go into your company's environment and you're going to log in with your name. So you're going to log into your company's environment with your name so that when you look down here, it's got your first name and your last name. Then if you're with us yesterday, you know that we can click on this home tab, click on this certification page within this home tab, click on get certified, and it should take you into our learning management system, our training portal, if you will. And here under get certified, if you click on it, we can find the exam that we're looking for. So if you want to filter by observability, you'll find here's the observability fundamentals. Here's the observability administration. The fundamentals class is the one you just had today. And you can go in here and you can register. Boom. I'm now registered, done. I can look over the instructions. There are only 20 questions here. Got 60 minutes completed. The pass rate is only 70% instead of 75%. Okay. And so it's a little easier because it's a newer exam. We're still checking it out. Check flighting it. One other thing, when you take this exam, it's in a different format. It's going to show you all the questions on one page. So as I'm ready to start and I go through this, I can start answering my questions and I can go on to the next question. Next question, they're all right here. Okay. And then when you're done and we get the last question, it will score it and pass it, whatever. Hopefully you passed. Again, you got to get a 70 or better to pass. All right. Okay. Murad asked a question here. When will we receive the link for this recording? Okay. I said yesterday it should be provided by my colleague. However, you didn't get yesterday's training. Don't know why you didn't get it, Murad, but I will give you yesterday's link. In fact, I'll post it up here in the chat box. If you'll just bear with me a minute, I will get you that information. I'll get that to all of you. But obviously the link for today's session won't be done until I close the classroom. So until I close the virtual Zoom meeting, I won't get it. So just bear with me on that. But I will get you yesterday's link here real quick. Just bear with me. I'm not sure why you didn't get it. I will follow up and see why that did not happen. Let me go in here to where I store that stuff. And and I will put this information in the chat box. So I'm not sure. Murad, the answer to your question, if you're not receiving emails you think you should get, you can reach out to training@sumologic.com. And I'm putting that information in here right now. So there's the email address about that. Okay. Couldn't download the slides, asking for a subscription of mail ID, which we can do from our company mail. Is it possible? Please send in mail or attach here. Okay. Yeah, the passcode should have been, the passcode's in the link I just sent. So the passcode, the link I copied in there for your recording yesterday has a passcode. It's in the chat box. So there's that. And then you're having problems trying to download the slides. The slides should download through your LinkedIn account. So bear with me a second while I check that out. Community slides. The observability fundamentals slides. Download now. Okay. Oh, I see. It wants you to sign up. That's annoying. I hate it when the tools that we use decide to change their plan. So if you have a Facebook or a Google account, you can do that, or you can sign up. We've got to find a better way of getting to those slides. And I know what we're going to do. We just haven't done it yet. So I can't easily upload the slides someplace for you to get to. So that's a problem. We got to figure out a better way for this. I'll talk to my team and figure that out. So yeah, we as a company don't use Dropbox, okay, or Microsoft. Or Microsoft what? Microsoft Teams, Microsoft, or you mean Microsoft version of Dropbox? Didn't they buy Dropbox? We'll figure something out on that. I don't have a good answer for you. One thing I will do as far as the exam goes, if you need me to show you a slide, let me know what you need and I will gladly show it to you. Okay. Again, the only test questions I remember off the slides were the 3 pillars, the 6 golden signals, which is also part of the documentation. And I think that's about it. There's not much there. Yeah, Microsoft OneDrive. Yeah, I got you. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, we don't use Microsoft products here. So just so you know, we're all Apple. So Apple and Google. So anyway, anymore, I don't need it. So I don't have a good answer for you. Something we'll have to think about. But like I said, just let me know what slides you need and I'll gladly share them. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, I think I've yacked long enough. Turn on my video camera to say thank you again for attending this session. Tomorrow, like I said, we'll talk about Cloud SIM, the security information and event management system. I think you're going to enjoy that class. And otherwise, I want to thank you for attending and I'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Please be safe. Good luck on the exam. Again, if you're done, feel free to sign out, but I would encourage you to take the exam, get certified while I'm here to help proctor the exam. Otherwise, please have yourselves a great day and please, as I said, be safe. Thank you much.
Thank you, John. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.